All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, if you haven't had an opportunity, please in the chat, put your name, your organization, and something you love about Utah, your community, so that we can, although we're virtual, feel like we're part of a group and associate with one another the best way we can in Zoom, which we are all so familiar with these days. But it allows us all to connect statewide. We've got people all over the state here today. We had about 50 people register, so we expect more to join us. But thank you so much for being here. Welcome to this free session on recruiting destination volunteers. We're really excited that this is the first session of this kind that UServeUtah is putting out. And we hope it is not the last. We hope to make these more readily available throughout the year. We'll also be recording this session so that it can be available to everyone after the session. So before we get started, this is an opportunity, although we're on Zoom, for you to disconnect. If you're anything like me, sometimes I'm on a Zoom training or another virtual training, and it's also an opportunity for me to catch up on email, connect with other people, do some catch up. But this is some professional development for you. You've signed up for this for a reason, for a purpose. So we invite you to disconnect from email, disconnect from other things, sit back in your chair and be present and enjoy this professional development opportunity because you deserve it. You deserve some professional development time. We all do. We have 3 presenters during this training, myself, Judy Hutt, and Madison Cook, to keep things interesting and flowing, and we'll all 3 introduce ourselves in just a minute. Also, throughout the presentation there, on each slide are pictures of Utah. These are Utah's events, tourism, outdoor recreation opportunities, and they're on the slides to kind of, as we talk about destination opportunities, to get your juices flowing, to be thinking about partnerships you might be able to create as you're thoughtful about what destination volunteering might look like for you in your role and for your organization. So those are there and available for you. Finally, we will all introduce ourselves as presenters, and please continue to do so in the chat. And then we'll start. So my name is Mike Moon. I've been with UServeUtah for about 5 years and super happy to be here to talk about this new way to be thoughtful about volunteerism, destination volunteerism. So Judy and Maddie.
Hi, I'm Judy Hutt, and I am the Community Engagement Program Manager. I have been with UServe for over 2 years, and my past is a former volunteer manager and executive director. So I'm super happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Madison Cook. I'm the Community Engagement Program Coordinator for UServeUtah. I love Utah and love to play outdoors, so this is a really exciting training and I'm really
Great, thanks so much. Awesome. So the first part of this training, we've intermingled. We've tried to make this as interactive as possible in a virtual setting for you all. So the first part is a quiz, and we're going to be talking about destination volunteerism. So using the chat, please comment where you think these pictures are. Perhaps use like a number 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the chat, give us your best guesses of where these Utah destinations are, what the pictures are, and where they are. This is awesome. I love seeing the guesses come in. Okay, I am going to put some details in the chat for each of these. The first is called Mars Desert Research Station. I had no idea Utah had something like this. Located in the San Rafael Swell, which is along I-70 between Richfield and Moab. And here is some additional information about the San Rafael Swell. It's really incredible. You can actually even like volunteer. And here's the link. I see it didn't hyperlink. as a volunteer at this location, but really, really kind of cool that Utah has such diverse things and options. The second one, the slide number 2, is in Weber Canyon, and this is called Devil's Slide. And in the chat is some additional historical information for Weber Canyon of Devil's Slide and how it got its name. But really cool. I've had a chance to see it personally, and it's pretty awesome. Number 3 is Thistle Ghost Town. Utah has quite a few ghost towns, and this one is located up Spanish Fork Canyon. And some additional information about Thistle Ghost Town I just put into the chat. Kind of interesting. And the fourth one, and now the locations are all up on the screen, is the Spiral Jetty, which is located in the Great Salt Lake, northern Great Salt Lake, near the promontory point. It's called Rosal Point, and it's a really cool feature, geologic or a constructed feature, human-made feature to go and take a look at. And here's some more information about the Spiral Jetty in the chat. So just some interesting destinations and things to get our juices flowing as we start talking about destination volunteering in Utah and things that bring people to Utah. First, we will get things going before we jump into the topic with a little bit about UServeUtah, a little bit of context, who we are, what it is we do. UServeUtah is the state's Commission on Service and Volunteerism. We are the state's central coordinating body for service and volunteerism. And that is a huge task, given that Utah is #1 for volunteerism in the nation and has been since the data was collected as part of the supplemental census. So go Utah. So we're responsible for developing, implementing, and sustaining a vision and culture of community engagement, volunteerism, service, national service, AmeriCorps, all of those things. So we work to build infrastructure and help all of you be as successful as you can be, so that every volunteer in Utah has the most successful volunteer experience as possible. Our goal is to help you be thoughtful about new ways you can use volunteers, new ways to be thoughtful about how to recruit and retain and measure volunteerism in your organizations. And essentially, that is why we exist. So anything along those lines, please just reach out to us. Our contact information will be on the last screen. So to get that, you'll have to stay throughout the entire presentation. The really quick plug for our training suite. So this virtual workshop is one of the 5 parts of our training suite that we offer. We have a volunteer management training, VMT. We use acronyms all the time, right? VMT, which is a 2-day in-person training, which really goes through, it's a professional development training that helps you as a volunteer coordinator to manage volunteers as effectively as possible within your organization. So this training is for anyone who coordinates volunteers, anyone who has touch points with volunteers. We offer it 3 times a year throughout Utah. We do it in person and we go on the road and take it all over the state. We do have one coming up really soon in Farmington, and we have a special discount code. Judy or Madison, if you could put the discount code in the chat, for everyone on this training to be able to attend the Farmington, the Davis County Volunteer Management Training at a discount. So it is November 8th and 9th. The registration closes on Halloween Day on October 31st. So you can use this discount code anytime between now and October 31st. to attend the workshop, the training at a discount. So take a look at that. Our next training is Volunteer Programming for Maximum Impact, VPMI. It is a training that is more change theory. So if your organization will be better as a result of you taking the training. There are evidence items that you'll complete that requires changing practices and perhaps policy and procedure at your organization to receive, which is really cool, a volunteer management designation for your organization. There's a bronze, silver, and gold level designation for your organization for completing the evidence items. It's a really, really in-depth, awesome training. We offer it one time each year in Salt Lake County. It's also a 2-day in-person training. So check that out. Next, we have a Leading for Impact training, which is designed for senior management at your organizations and businesses. And senior management at nonprofit organizations and for-profit businesses will be taking this Leading for Impact training concurrently and networking and connecting with one another in really amazing ways. And that training will be piloting in 2024, starting early 2024. So more information on our website coming up on that. You're a part of the virtual volunteer workshops. We'll be providing these throughout the year on various topics. So watch for our emails, our newsletters, however you found out about this one. We'll be letting you know about upcoming ones. And finally, we offer a spontaneous volunteer management training for anyone involved in emergency management. We offer it once a year in March. And you can find information on all of these trainings on our website at UServeUtah.org. That said, I will turn the time over to Judy to introduce our topic.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. So like Mike said, this is our very first virtual volunteer workshop, and we hope to have many more. We came up with this idea really to focus on specific topics that came up in our volunteer management training, and just make it more accessible to those who might not be able to travel to our regular trainings. So at the end, we're going to have a 3-question survey to find out future topics that you'll be interested in. So please stick around for that. So I selected recruiting destination volunteers to be our first topic because it's just something that comes up frequently in our trainings. And it's something that I also dealt with as a past volunteer manager. We hear questions like, how can I recruit more volunteers to my rural community? Or how can I recruit people traveling to Utah? Or how can I recruit volunteers for my statewide program in communities where I don't live? I remember talking to Caitlin at Grand Staircase Escalante Partners, and she told me, we've maxed out all the volunteers in our small community. So maybe you can relate to that. And we hope that this training can provide you with more ideas and some opportunities to connect with other volunteer managers. So let's talk about the word volunteerism. In the chat, will you put what you think of when you think of volunteerism? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Oh, here we go. Yay! Okay, Lindsay, going to places to volunteer, international trips that you pay for, community service hours, people traveling specifically to volunteer, getting involved in community and service. Oh, yeah, now all they're coming in quick. People travel out of the country all the time for service. What about doing it here in Utah? Bingo. Thank you, Emily. I think of groups that go to Central or South America to build schools, seeking volunteer opportunities while vacationing. These are all good. It's interesting how we all have a different perception of what that might mean. I used to be an executive director for an African nonprofit. So volunteer tourism to me was always about international travel. But I like what Emily said. It's like people are always seeking these opportunities outside of Utah. But what about here in our own state? So, you know, technically volunteerism refers to travel that combines vacation and traveling. It's often short-term, group-oriented, and requires little to no expertise. And there's usually a fee to participate, and it's often run by a company. Probably the most distinguishing characteristic of volunteerism is it's focused on the experience of the participant. There's a lot of debate about volunteerism in our industry, and it can be riddled with criticism. Many organizations are rethinking their business models, especially in a post-pandemic world, and discovering new ways that volunteers can make an impact. So in this training today, we're not really going to dive into that arm of volunteerism, but we want to explore and kind of rebrand it about how Utah organizations can engage individuals traveling to, visiting, or living in other communities. So at UServeUtah, we decided on the term destination volunteers. So whether it's a Utahn or someone traveling from out of state, it refers to a volunteer visiting and serving in another community. So today we want you to get started about rethinking and reframing what volunteerism, I keep wanting to say volunteerism, it just seems more natural, volunteerism could look like for your organization. So are you in an area where a lot of tourists come? Or you're a rural town that needs more volunteers? Do you have a program where you're trying to recruit volunteers from other geographic areas or those who are visiting? Please note, we may bring up the terms tourists or travelers, but it really just applies to any volunteer visiting your community. And our hope is that these resources will help you to expand your volunteer network. So our learning objectives today are to, I got a little carried away with my slides, to create meaningful short-term opportunities for volunteers visiting your community, to design a recruitment message to target destination volunteers, develop strategic local and statewide partnerships for marketing and recruitment, and expand your volunteer network with inclusive, virtual, and micro-volunteer recruitment strategies. All right, a little bit about Utah tourism, which is kind of an interesting take. We got this from the Utah Office of Tourism. 17.8 million travelers were coming to Utah in 2021. This is really interesting. Utah residents account for 39% of these visitations, in-person trips. And that means that 41% of in-state travelers are from Salt Lake City. So be considering that as if you are trying to target people to your community, Salt Lake City might be a great place for you to do your marketing and recruitment. Utah skier visits were at a record high with almost 6 million. And of course, as we know, our beautiful national parks, we had over 11 million travelers to our parks. So just a little bit of info about out-of-state versus in-state travelers that might get you thinking as well. Out-of-state travelers obviously rely heavily on advice of friends and relatives for their travel decisions. Oh, thanks, Emily. Yeah, this year is right after COVID. That probably skews those numbers. They use a wider range of planning sources, and they're more likely to make their trip decisions a month or more in advance. But in-state travelers, I think this is interesting, rely on their own experience for travel decisions, the places that they've been. So if they go somewhere and then they find out, hey, cool, I found out that this place offers volunteer opportunities, perhaps they'll come back and want to volunteer there. In-state travelers are typically drawn to the larger cities, including Logan, Ogden, and Provo-Orem. And they're more impulsive than out-of-state travelers, with 55% making their travel decision less than 2 weeks before their trip. So with this is just interesting data that can help you kind of be thinking about where you would want to target people and some areas that you want to dive into. And Mike's going to explain that a little bit more in his section. Okay, so let's dive in here. But first, before we get into our first one, where is this? Put in the chat where this is or what this is. Kanab. Yes, beautiful Kanab. This is called Balloons and Tunes Roundup. I'm sure many of you know, and many of you are from that area. This event will be celebrating its 10th year anniversary with the launch of over 40 hot air balloons and concerts with the upcoming weekend of February 17th through 19th. So just a kind of a fun little fact. All right, let's dive into our first topic, which is creating meaningful short-term volunteer opportunities. Destination volunteers are likely to be your one-time volunteers. They are going to come and go. Perhaps they'll return and volunteer again, but essentially you have one time to engage them in your work. It might be tempting to just write off these volunteers, thinking that they're more work than they are worth. But certain projects definitely benefit from short-term volunteers, and their help can definitely be appreciated. Some people might be really drawn to your cause, and they don't have access to helping in their own communities. People visiting Utah might be really into conservation work, and they can't do that from where they live. Short-term opportunities allow volunteers to give back to the community that they're visiting and support causes that they're passionate about. Positions become more about experiences that mutually benefit the organization and the volunteer. Be mindful of volunteer opportunities that require knowledge or experience to make an enduring impact. Those that require a lot more training might not be the best fit. These goals are best achieved with longer-term opportunities, where these volunteers can really devote more time to making a sustainable contribution. These opportunities might be more impactful for volunteers who really understand local culture, programs, relationships, or the community. But take the opportunity to educate these volunteers about your mission. You have a captive audience, even if they're only there for one day. They may not come back to volunteer, but they can become advocates and donors. I had the opportunity last week to go with our team to go and volunteer with the Granite Education Foundation here in Salt Lake City. And they did a really great job before the training to share some stats and some information about the organization and the cause. And I was definitely more impressed because I knew more about it, and I would more likely volunteer or be a donor because I learned about that organization while I was there. Okay, so short-term volunteer ideas. These are just to get us started, and then we're going to open up in the chat for you to share some of the things that maybe you do as an organization. Here's some ideas that we have found that people tend to do that work well if people are only coming for a short period of time or visiting a community. Construction, cleanup and sanitation, sorting, organizing and distributing supplies, cleaning and beautifying communities, forests, national parks, event support, socializing shelter animals, assisting animal charities. So those are just a few things. What about what you do? What do you do at your organization that you think would fit this area? Will you please share those in the chat? Okay, Emily's from Tiny Tim's Foundation. She said, come build toys for a day or for a few hours. That's great. Oh, Jesse's from Youth Garden Project, garden task, art painting, new signage. Oh, Gina, great, harvesting fruit. Okay, Jan saying her program isn't short-term, but she keeps a list of volunteering in the area, posting a newspaper and keeping a list for community service court hours. Oh, Michelle's from Circles. She has a volunteer from Kansas City who travels to Salt Lake often. When he comes, he plans his travel around Thursday nights, and he and his family donate and serve a meal to our families. I love that. Stephanie putting freight on the shelves. Lindsay from UServeUtah is saying most of our events are child engagement events. We often need help setting up and running them. That's awesome. All right, and feel free to keep adding to the chat. I'm sure that everyone would love to hear some of those. So let's talk about shift lengths. Shift lengths. So research shows that the average volunteer shift length is 5 to 9 hours, but that the standard is 4 to 6 hours. So we do our community engagement pathways survey, and we had over 2,000 Utahns respond to this question. How many hours do you want to volunteer each time? 1,200, that was about 72%, indicated that they want to volunteer 1 to 2 hours. 590 responded half day, and 147 responded full day. Now this might look different for every organization, right? But our recommendation is to create shorter shifts whenever possible. It can require more time coordinating and more volunteers, but it's just a great way to improve that volunteer experience, especially for those who might be coming just for a short period of time. So the ideal shift length for someone traveling or visiting another city really would be 2 to 3 hours. and to give options for 2 volunteer shifts, a morning and an afternoon. That way, if somebody wants to volunteer more time, they can. But then it's not an all-day thing. For those on vacation, it offers that flexibility to volunteer and then continue on with their trip itinerary. And those who are traveling within Utah, an afternoon shift might be necessary to travel to their destination and get back. And when you're scheduling morning shifts, the best you can, avoid early start times. So if any of you have been to our volunteer trainings, you usually know that I always tell my horror stories of my volunteer management days, and I always learn the hard way. But my very first volunteer management experience was actually at Thanksgiving Point. This was 20 years ago, and at that time, it really was a destination. And we were doing the Utah County Fair. It was being hosted there, and I was responsible for all the volunteers. And I didn't know anything, and I scheduled really long shifts. They started really early, and they were like 8 hours. We had students from BYU, we had people coming up from the U, we had people from Davis County coming. First of all, everyone was late because it started too early, and then everyone got burnt out. And it was just a long time. So, something to be considering, not only if you're targeting people from outside your community, but just in general. Anytime you can do that and have overlapping shifts, it works really well. Okay, next, position description. We dive into this a lot in our volunteer management training, and we have a whole module devoted to this. But a detailed position description always allows that volunteer manager to intentionally map out what the organization needs, and it helps the volunteer know what they're getting into. Be sure to include it on your website. Sometimes people will sign up, but they want to know specifically what they'll be doing. Always be specific about your expectations, including commitment, time, and location. And suggest clothing for those unfamiliar, not only just with the climate, but maybe with the responsibility. On that event I told you about that I got to volunteer with our team, I didn't know we were going to do that. That was on me. But I wore flats, and I was standing in like a line making kits, and my feet were killing me at the end of the day. So always be detailed in all of those things that you're sharing. Okay, and finally, commitment. All right, so the commitment. As you all know, one of the biggest challenges in volunteer recruitment is individuals not showing up for their assignments. And this is especially true if people are traveling. There are many variables when training's involved, but no-shows can always be an added burden to the volunteer manager. So always recruit more volunteers than you need. Statistics show that the average percentage of volunteers who actually show up is between 61 to 70%. So always be trying to recruit more than you need. And sometimes that can be tricky because sometimes you have way too many volunteers and they all do show up and you don't have enough. But consider the fact that overall, there's going to be quite a bit of dropout. Be detailed in your position description about all those things that we talked about, but always include things like maps and directions. You want to make sure that people know exactly where they're going. I talk to a lot of people and they'll say, oh yeah, well, they didn't show up. And I usually ask them, like, did you send out an email reminder or text? And sometimes they'll say, oh, there was an automatic email reminder that went out, or things like that. But a personal touch from a volunteer manager always helps with that kind of retention. So if a personal email or a text from someone saying, hey, we're looking forward for you to come tomorrow, just a couple of reminders, we can't wait to see you. And then it gives people the opportunity, if they do have to back out, they're more likely to tell you if it's a personal email. Always include that contact information for your volunteers to reach that volunteer manager if they get lost or delayed. Sometimes people get delayed and then they just think, oh, I'm embarrassed, I'm not going to show. But again, a personal connection will help them feel like they have a relationship and they can just let you know in advance. And then always have a contingency plan for no-shows. Can the project be done with less volunteers? Can you call on your current or established volunteers to help fill in or finish the project if it's timely and time sensitive? Could staff or board members step in to help? Those are all things to be considering with those short-term volunteer positions. Before we dive into our next topic, I'm just wondering if anybody had any questions or comments or suggestions. Feel free to unmute yourself. You can go ahead and express it in person, or you can always put them in the chat. Okay, then we're gonna go to one more image here. Oh wait, yes, Gina, we will have access to, we have the presentation and we will also have resources on our website. Thanks for asking. Okay, so where is this one? Where are we at here? Comment in the chat. I want to be there right now. That looks amazing. Yeah, Becca, I agree. I don't know, but I want to go. Ooh, Split Mountain. I don't have that in my notes, but what I have in my notes is that it's Dinosaur National Monument. This monument is designated International Dark Sky Park. Utah has received a total of 10 International Dark Sky Park designations. All right, we're going to turn the time over to Madison.
Thank you, Judy. I know Dinosaur National Monument is so cool. We should all go right now. Okay, so we're going to move on to designing your recruitment message to target your destination zone. So as you all know, travel can be a transformative experience. It doesn't matter where you're going. It could be another country or another county. It just helps us become better global citizens. By being mindful of our impact on the places that we visit, it will help us deepen our understanding of our place in the world. When you are designing your recruitment messages for those who are visiting outside of your community, it's important to consider why they should care, and not just about your organization or your organization's cause, but about your community. So it's important to have your participants consider all the reasons that volunteering can make an impact. And one of the best parts of travel is that every adventure is an opportunity to benefit communities and conserve the environments and destinations that we're visiting. So everyone has the ability to improve lives and protect these awesome. Okay, so we're going to get started with a little excerpt from Canyonlands Field Institute. It reads, whether you are a visitor or a long-time resident, giving back to this beautiful area goes a long way to ensure sustainable community health. Adding a volunteer component to your mod vacation is a great way to show your support for the community that has made your adventure. So why we really love that at UServe is that Canyonlands Field Institute is appealing back to the desire to give back to Moab, because without Moab and this great community, you wouldn't be able to be there, right? It wouldn't be possible. Okay, so if you've been to any of our volunteer management trainings, you know that we love to talk about this acronym, and it's silly, but we love it. It's called NAHB. So NHB. So this three-part recruitment message includes a statement of need, how the volunteer can help, and benefit of the position to the volunteer. So starting off with a statement of need, it's important to remember that this is the need of the population or demographic or the community that you're serving, not the need of your agency. So the example that we use pretty often is with Special Olympics. Instead of saying, we need volunteers, we need coaches so bad, please volunteer. Instead, you could say kids with intellectual disabilities need a soccer. Next, you move on to how the volunteer can help. So it's also important to note that you have so much more of an impact by saying you can help by, instead of saying volunteers are. So the third person is just not as appealing, we have found. So you can help these kids by volunteering as a coach from 2 to 4 on Saturday afternoons. So you're letting them know the specific time frame, what they can do, and it makes it a little bit more digestible to them. And then the benefit. So you're answering how volunteers will be helping themselves by doing so. Whether we like to think about it or not, everyone is motivated by what is in it for them. So this can either be the benefits of working at the organization or the specific benefits of doing a particular job. So maybe you have free pizza, or maybe you're going to give out free swag. And those benefits will really help to drive your recruitment. So we have a quick example here, and then we can go over some questions. But this is a really great one. So the mountain trails need maintenance to become more accessible. The mountain trails need maintenance to become more accessible for all who wish to enjoy the Park City trips. Volunteers will spend 3 hours in Round Valley removing invasive species, removing trash, and trimming overgrown trims. Volunteering will make you feel proud to walk a trail and say you had it. So you can see how they're able to clearly say the statement of need, these trails need some help, and the specific way on how they can help, the specific activities and the time frame. And then finally, the benefits, what's in it for them, more of an intrinsic motivation here, but feeling proud to have taken part in helping this. So do you have any questions on the NAHUB acronym or that recruiting message tactic? And feel free to type them in the chat as we go, or take yourself off of it. Okay, we'll move on, but please, once again, feel free. We'll have questions. We'll open it up for questions at the end of the presentation as well. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes that you guys can ask anything that has come to mind throughout the training. Okay, so like I had said, unfortunately or fortunately, right, we all are motivated by something. So how are you going to appeal to these volunteers that you're trying to recruit? Oftentimes it can be intrinsic motivation examples, or it can be extrinsic motivation. Motivational factors. As we go through these, feel free to type in the chat anything that your organization does specifically to appeal to these intrinsic motivators. So some examples that we have here. Volunteering on vacation lets you give back and grow as a family. In our training suites, we do talk a lot in UServe about family volunteering. This is a really great way for families to see each other in a different light, to create generational volunteers, and to be able to have that amazing bonding experience, right? Volunteering lets you give back to the community you are visiting or the community that you love. Volunteering will keep blank beautiful for generations to come. Volunteering will help blank in this community have a better quality of life. So are there any other benefits that you can think of specific to your organization that would fall under this category? Feel free to type them in the chat. Okay. Then we're going to move on to extrinsic motivation. So this could include volunteers receiving some swag after their shift. This also works as great marketing for you. Later on, right, as they go back to their communities, then maybe people ask them about, hey, what's that hat you're wearing? What's that organization? Being able to share. Another example would be volunteer shifts include snacks, lunch, drinks, free food, right? Everyone loves free food. That's a really great one. Volunteers will receive a discount to a gift shop, a local restaurant, program, or trip. Mike will dive deeper into developing those community partners later on, but that's also a really great extrinsic factor. And then finally, volunteers will receive a certification upon shift completion. This is also awesome bragging rights, right? They can hang that up on their wall and take some pride in being reminded of the great work that they did. So the percentage of healthier. Sorry, Jan says, do you have the percentage of the healthier impact volunteering has on those volunteers? Mike, Judy?
Yeah, so there's some really great data. Jan, in fact, grab our email addresses at the end, particular mine. This is something that we're working on right now, is all of the research and data and kind of just like sorting through all of the data on what are the health, emotional, mental, and real physical health benefits to doing volunteerism. And there is so much data out there. I'd be happy to share those studies with you. So just reach out to us and I'll share them.
Great, thank you, Mike. If you guys have any questions that come to mind, please feel free to type them in the chat about this volunteer recruiting messaging tactics. Okay, and then our fun guest where? So this one is a little bit different. Utah has always inspired really great storytelling, right? Can you guys guess what movie was shot? Nice. Michelle and Dan, really quick. You guys are right. It is The Sandlot. So this field obviously looks a lot different now than it did when the movie was filmed in 1993. But while the film was set in 1960s California, it actually was filmed in Salt Lake City, Midvale, and Ogden in the 90s. This Sandlot is located near Glen Rose Drive in Salt Lake City. And Sandlot is actually celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, which is so fun. Anyway, here's a fun little picture with the Beast and the whole crew. Utah Pride there. Hey, awesome, and I'll pass it off to Mike now.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much, Judy and Madison. This is fantastic. So the next section of this presentation is going to be focused on a little bit more of like the how-to, right? So perhaps you're bought into this idea of destination volunteerism. How do I actually do it? This might be super nebulous. How do I even recruit people that might be visiting Utah in the area where our organization is or serves? That's a lot to wrap your brain around when you've got so many other things on your plate as volunteer managers and coordinators and people in nonprofits and social programs. So it's a lot, and we understand that. So hopefully in this next section, we can kind of break down how exactly to operationalize that or unpack that and make it work, some really practical tools. So a really effective way to start to think about and grasping for yourselves how could we operationalize this and make this work is thinking about building some really strong strategic partnerships. That may be your role at your organization, it may not be, but involving your team in a brainstorm of what would some strategic partnerships look like. But when it comes to marketing these volunteer opportunities and recruiting prospective traveling volunteers to your area or the areas you serve, it will require some thought around recruitment and partnerships, and that will be key to your success. So recognize the importance of partnerships and how that can amplify your resources around this area. Also, I think it's important to think about, Madison gave some really great suggestions on why is this, what are the motivations for individuals for doing destination volunteerism? And I think as you're being thoughtful about you're in the hub, the benefit to the volunteers, those things will be really important. Some external, some intrinsic and extrinsic motivations for you to help you in recruiting volunteers, destination volunteers, but also like, why as an organization would you even be thoughtful about this? What's a motivation to your organization for doing it? And I think some of the things were already brought up. I think one is that your organization might already be maxed out in your community, in the volunteers that you're able to recruit. Perhaps your volunteer base is small. So for your organization, as if you have the need to sell this to someone in management or other team members at your organization, one way would be, this is a new volunteer pool. This is a new way for us to recruit volunteers that we don't typically recruit at our organization. So that could be an organizational motivation. Next would be new relationships and being thoughtful about volunteers from destination volunteerism can lead to some really interesting things for your organization. It can lead to new partnerships, which if you think about it, if you're having volunteers from other states and other areas, perhaps other countries volunteering with your organization, becoming familiar with your mission and what it is you do, it could lead to additional partnerships in terms of skills-based volunteers. Perhaps they buy into your mission. They're like, what you do is amazing. I want to continue to help. I have this skill set. How can I continue to help in a virtual fashion when I'm back? It can lead to potential funders outside of your typical funding pool within your community. People that are engaged in your organization as volunteers as part of a trip or travel. Again, if you do it right, can be really bought in to your organization's mission, to what it is you're doing, how you're serving the community, and be potential long-term future funders of your work. And that's huge for your organization. So relationships can be really key. So again, if you're thinking about as an organization, why would we even be thoughtful about this? What are the benefits to us? Or as you're trying to sell it to other team members or to management, here are a couple of ways. Also, it's new ways for your organization to be thoughtful about how to use volunteers. So as you're thinking about, as we've talked about, thinking about what that volunteer can do, right? A position description, a statement of need, how the volunteer can help. As you're thinking about this, it will require you to think outside of the box in ways that your organization has typically used volunteers and new ways to use volunteers, which has impacts across the board for your organization, not just for destination volunteers, but being creative in how you're using volunteers and things volunteers might be able to do to enhance your organization will reap benefits across your organization. Also, it will expand your own thinking about like, what is volunteerism? Is people talking about our organization volunteerism? Is what we call formal versus informal volunteerism something we want to dabble in? Informal volunteerism where people just find a need and serve, right? Is there a way that we can engage or have travelers thinking about volunteerism that connects them to our organization in an informal way, not through our traditional volunteer orientation and background check processes? Is there a way that we can engage them informally that will allow you as an organization to expand how you're thinking about what volunteerism is and how you're talking about it? I think this framework, while again, we're talking about recruiting travelers to Utah and destination volunteers, has a lot of benefits to the nonprofit community in Utah outside of that. And I think finally, in my personal brainstorming session, I'm sure there are many more, but it has an ability to create a new sense of community, connection to the area. It can expand for you and your staff, your own thinking about how do I travel as a family? So many, I think, benefits to you as an organization to be thoughtful about this new framework and perhaps for you, new way of being thoughtful about volunteerism. So I'll give an example. My family, my wife right now is pregnant. And so we had fall break recently, just this last week. We're in Davis School District, and our fall break was last week. And so I took myself and our two boys to Monument Valley. And while we were there, we did volunteer work. We worked with the Navajo Nation on doing just a little cleanup project in Monument Valley for like a new trail system that they're building. And there was a lot of like leftover garbage and trash from construction crews that had come through. And what it did for us as a family is it allowed us to engage to get to know the area in a way we wouldn't have been able to. It allowed us to connect with the Navajo Nation on a deeper level that we would not have connected with otherwise. And for me as a father and for my boys, it connected them to the area. So we were later in the trip doing another hike, and my son was like, I'm not going to bring my fruit snacks because I picked up a fruit snack wrapper on our other trail and I don't want it to fall out of my pocket and create waste for someone else to have to clean up. Like, he was being thoughtful. It changed his mind in a way that he is thinking about the outdoors in a new way. And it was just a really incredible moment for me to be thoughtful about, why are we not doing this on every trip? So I think the more we're talking about this type of volunteerism is going to do some really magical things for our communities and the way we're thinking about it. But I guess what I'm saying is another benefit would be that you're also thinking about, when I travel, how am I engaging with our travel community? The community has given you this awesome memory, this place to visit, this amazing place. And what's your responsibility to give back to that place and to those memories that you've made? Wow, that was quite like the pedestal there that I got on. So I apologize and thanks for just like listening to me through that. We're gonna skip, I'm gonna first give you some information and then we're gonna brainstorm. So I'll come back to that slide. Let's talk partners. So to operationalize destination volunteerism is going to require, like I just said, partnerships with other areas and organizations within the areas you serve and where you're located. Up on the screen are some options and some ideas of where you might be able to, I'm going to talk about this in the next slide, so I'm being careful, but the partnerships you might be able to create. Some not listed here. I think Utah is becoming, because of our tech industry and our fantastic economy, frankly, a place where places like the shop and industry and WeWork, where individuals that have come into the community and have started a business have like a little office space that they rent perhaps for a day or two a week and things like that. That might be another place, as people are new to the community and implants, for them to connect to opportunities and ways to plug into what Utah has to offer, right? Like we do volunteerism. And so perhaps it's not destination volunteerism. These are folks that perhaps now live in Utah, but it might be a gap. It might be an opportunity for you as an organization to be thoughtful about volunteer recruitment. In fact, we're recently doing some data on our strategic planning, and myself and a couple of team members were in Cedar City, and one of the attendees in our listening tour said, I'm a brand new family, 4 kids, and a partner to Utah. And however recruitment is being done for volunteerism, it's not reaching me. And so his plea was, how can we rethink how we're recruiting and reaching young, new families to Utah to engage them in volunteerism? And in particular, he's like, I'm so busy. Family volunteerism is really important to me. So that I'm not giving up something to get something. I'm not giving up time with family to volunteer, which I also think is important. It's together, it's family time volunteering. So as you're thinking about this, a lot of travelers are going to be traveling with other people, friends, partners, kids, families. So yeah, be thoughtful about how you're engaging groups, I guess. But partner brainstorming. So think about organizations in your community that are bringing people to your community as a destination point, or connecting with them once they arrive. Hotels, Airbnbs, libraries, where can you put materials for them to be thoughtful about how they can give back, right? And get your NAHUB, your statement of need, how they can help and benefit to the volunteer statement into the hands of organizations, coffee shops. I love it. Thanks so much, Dan. In fact, I should probably monitor the chat a little bit better than I am. I'm cutting the last part of expand your volunteer network, so we have time. Oh, sorry, we have the duty. That was just for me. I'm like reading it to everyone. Woo, here we go. Okay, so here are some ideas. Chambers of Commerce, right? Tourism office, other nonprofit organizations. How form some partnerships for you to get information out there and do some targeted recruitment. Next is think about some cross-promotional ideas. So hotels, Airbnbs, all have a benefit to people traveling to Utah. Are there ways in which you can cross-promote? Are there ways in which, as they're doing their recruitment for Utah or their community as a travel destination, that you can share in that promotional cost in some way and also add your volunteer opportunity, right? And spend an hour or two volunteering here. And think about that as a strategy to recruiting volunteerism. And I hope you're jotting these down as you see these photos, like rafting in Moab, like, right? There are so many tourism attractions that bring people to Utah, rafting companies, and oh my gosh, along our many rivers, there's some fantastic rafting opportunities. Is there a partnership there with them? But things that bring people to Utah, are there ways in which you can co-brand, co-swag, etc.? Madison mentioned this just briefly, but like, are there ways in which you can partner with restaurants, hotels, rental car places, in offering discount codes if they volunteer with your organization, right? If they give back, and other benefits to your volunteers, which could also be cross promotion, right? So in the effort of recruiting volunteers, I'm doing a quick time check.
So Mike, there's a great example. Kira put a great example for best friends in the chat.
Missed it. Thank you, Kira. Best Friends has branded coffee sleeves in many of our local coffee shops, directing visitors to the sanctuary. Thank you. I love that. This is Best Friends Sanctuary in Kanab. Is that right? Perfect. I volunteered there myself personally. It's fantastic. So yes, I think about cross-promotional ways to do cross-promotion like that. So we are, just for a couple of minutes, we're not going to have as much time as we thought, but we want to just not be like talking heads on a virtual screen. So I know sometimes I roll my eyes when people are like, we're going to break you into like breakout rooms. Use it for the best that you can. If you can't turn on your camera, that's totally fine. Just share ideas. But we're going to break you into some breakout rooms. Please share some ideas with your group on this slide of businesses you might be able to recruit, ways you might be able to promote destination volunteers, cross-promotional ideas that you have, and just have a moment of sharing. So we'll break you up into groups and we'll leave you in those groups for 5 minutes. So just a short time. So get right to the point and be really quick, and we'll come right back. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was a good opportunity for you to connect and share and not just like listen to us. Those can be awkward. So just like thanks for indulging us and like connecting with one another. We're such a healthier community when we collaborate and connect. So although virtual, thanks for doing that. So just briefly, anyone, let's take maybe 3 shares from the group. Anyone, something that you shared that you'd like the whole group to hear, or something that someone else said that sparked an idea and you're like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant, that you'd like to share. Let's do 3.
I can go.
Yeah, Carl, go.
I think for Big Brothers Big Sisters specifically, and probably a lot of volunteer organizations, we have like a 1-year commitment into a lot of our programs and don't really offer one-time things, but something I've always thought about utilizing. I did an AmeriCorps term myself, and I feel like we get a lot of, they're not like volunteerists, but like people coming here for like seasonal work, whether it be like ski resorts, raft tour guides, AmeriCorps, other programs. So something I'm always curious to eventually try to like tap into, those people that are coming to Utah for other reasons and are here for short periods of time, but how to connect them to the community and kind of what we do. So not really a fleshed out idea, but just kind of a thought.
Yeah, Carl, that's really interesting. Yeah, as an interesting take on like this idea of destination volunteers, people that are here for a period of time, AmeriCorps Vistas or NCCC teams, or right, like things like that, where people are here for a period and may move away, but because you have like a longer term commitment, ways to tap into that population. That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing. And also invite you to think about, like, are there ways the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Utah might be able to be thoughtful about volunteer opportunities that don't require that type of a commitment, where you can. Other ideas. Let's have two other shares.
I can share real quick.
Thanks, Gina.
We spoke a little bit about, how can you entice these people or volunteers to come to your area and like advertise to them, like, oh, look at all these amazing things you can do, without bombarding them like in a like within the volunteer job description or whatever. So kind of like going back to what you said about the benefits they can get, like, oh, they can get a discount for this restaurant, they can get this swag, and they can get a informational brochure or something on what to do in the area. So it's not all, you're not like overkilling and bombarding them with information.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Additionally, as I was reviewing our slides again last night to prepare for this, I thought, like, for a lot of your current volunteer base, they may have relatives or family or friends that live out of state, right? And perhaps messaging to your current volunteer base on when your relatives, friends, associates are traveling to Utah, think about having them volunteer with us. You've already had a good experience, right? Like, it's a perhaps like low-hanging fruit to enter into this. But thanks, Gina, really great share. So thank you so much for participating in that. I have one more slide and then we'll kind of wrap things up. And this is some additional recruitment ideas for you. So where previously we were talking about partnerships, where we might be able to create partnerships for some cross-promotion or co-branding and things like that. These are areas of recruitment. Here are some additional places where you might be thoughtful about putting information on destination volunteerism out there that we've brainstormed. Certainly, I'm sure there are so many more opportunities and options, but this is a way for you to get your creative juices flowing and be thinking about, how do I even start? Some other additional options are on the screen for you to be thoughtful about. Another program, we've listed higher education and community service centers there. Best Friends Animal Sanctuary got me thinking about this, but there's a movement called Alternative Breaks where higher education groups will travel to other communities or other areas to do volunteer projects as a group for like fall break, spring break, winter break, summer break, and things like that. Perhaps connecting with higher education campuses outside of Utah and saying, hey, do you do alternative breaks? And if so, can we offer a volunteer opportunity here in Utah? And striking some of those conversations, I think might be a low-hanging fruit for you as well as an organization. And the reason why I say Best Friends is because I know that they have accepted those groups in the past as well. Great. So another pop quiz for you. What ski resort is this? Hint, it is the longest running ski resort in the United States owned by a single family. Yes, you are right. Becca, congratulations. This is Beaver Mountain, founded in 1939 by the Seeholzer family, still owned and operated by them. So thank you. I turn the time over to Madison to close us out.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. We want to open the floor to you guys for any questions that you may have. Please feel free to either write these in the chat or go off mute. But we will take questions for the next 5 or so minutes.
Do you have a schedule for when you're going to be doing the the volunteer management thing? You mentioned the one in Farmington in November. Is there a schedule for when other ones are happening?
Yeah, thanks, Becca. So the plan right now I don't have dates yet, but I can send these on. We are going to do, we're going to go to Cedar City. So we're going to be in Cedar City in February. We're going to Tooele in May, and then we'll be in Salt Lake County in the fall of next year. So that's kind of that's our rotating, that's where we're at. And then our volunteer programming for maximum impact, we do that every year in August in Salt Lake County.
Okay, so if I wanted to participate in the volunteer management one and I live in Logan, Farmington would probably be the best
I
option.
think Farmington, unless you want someone to send you off to
Yeah,
Tooele.
go down to Cedar City for a couple days.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Good excuse to, I don't know, go to Southern Utah.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lindsay says, where do I sign up for emails about different upcoming trainings or visitors to keep an eye on your list? Judy, do you want to answer?
Ooh, you know what? That is a great question. I wonder if Sarah's our communications manager and she's been our tech support. People are wondering about the email list. Are you sign up for emails? Thank you. She's on top of it. So there's our constant contact. That's probably the best way to do it. You can also follow us on social media, UServeUtah. And then if you've been to a training, I try to send out an email if you're on that list. But now that you've been here, I will keep in touch. Ooh, Kira, you can come volunteer at Best Friends when you visit Cedar. That's true.
Okay, thank you guys. Any last minute questions you'd like to ask before we wrap up? Okay, if any come to mind, here is our contact information. So yes, thank you guys so much. It has been so great to interact with you all, and I hope that you guys all found this training helpful. So thank you.